as a group occupy one of the lowest functions in Brazilian social and economic life. After the abolition of slavery, they continued to live much as they did before 1888. Many Afro-Brazilians live in the province of Bahia. Bahia has become one of the most globally recognized dwelling places for Afro-Brazilians. One of the reasons for this large Afro-Brazilian population in Bahia is because it was the only region that enacted a land distributive law in 1897. Even though this law was not specifically directed at Afro-Brazilians in particular, it still enabled many former slaves to acquire land in that area, hence becoming a sort of base for Afro-Brazilian culture to thrive. Also, many Africans were imported into Bahia directly, so it was a well-known drop-off spot for Afro-Brazilians. The legacy of slavery affected Afro-Brazilians heavily, just like many other groups of Afro-descendant people throughout the world. Slavery in the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking colonies was slightly different when it came to the children of enslaved African women and their slave masters. In North America, these children were largely ignored and seen as illegitimate, while in South America, the master was more likely to embrace his child and even pass down wealth and ownership to them. This created a culture in South America, especially in Brazil, in which Afro-descendant people sought the acceptance of Europeans or white Latinos. The following portrait is a great example of this, as it shows a Brazilian family becoming whiter, exemplifying the Afro-Brazilian reality as a whole, as a grandmother celebrates the cleansing of her grandchild's blackness. Although this has historically been true throughout Brazil, many Brazilians, especially today, are beginning to remove that stain of self-hatred and embrace their African ancestry. There is no doubting the unique history of Afro-descendant people in Brazil. One of the reasons why Afro-Brazilians are so unique is simply because no other nation in the Western Hemisphere outnumber the amount of enslaved Africans taken to that country. It's estimated that about 37% of all enslaved Africans sent to North America, South America, and the Caribbean all came to Brazil. So in a sense, Brazil can be seen as the center of the African diaspora, that is of course outside of Africa. So where did Afro-Brazilians originally come from? Well, we have several documented and cultural proofs about where they originally came from. Afro-Brazilians descend mostly from West, Central, and Southern African populations, like most others in the diaspora. But it's important to note some of the most influential groups of Africans that dominated and influenced the Afro-Brazilian culture. These groups of Africans consisted of various peoples like the Mbundu, Bakongo, Yoruba, and Muslim Africans like the Hausa and Fulani. Some Africans imported to Brazil were Muslims who could write and speak in the Arabic language. Ironically, some enslaved Afro-Brazilians were more educated than their masters, because some Portuguese and Brazilian masters couldn't even read or write in Portuguese. In fact, arguably the most significant slave rebellion in Brazil was started by a group of enslaved Muslim Africans known today as the Malay Revolt. The other influential group of Africans that make up Afro-Brazilian culture comes from the Yoruba. The influence of Yoruba culture is well known throughout Brazil, as many Afro-Brazilians still venerate the Yoruba pantheon of deities. Full-blown festivals and celebrations put the Yoruba pantheon and Yoruba culture on full display as they honor the memory of their ancestors. Another influential group of Africans in Afro-Brazilian culture comes from the Congo. The Mbundu martial art of Ngolo was used and transformed into capoeira by Afro-Brazilians. Capoeira went on to be one of the national icons of Brazil and perhaps is the most recognizable aspect of all Brazilian culture worldwide. One of the most prominent religions among Afro-Brazilians, aside from Catholicism, is Candomblé, a religion they formed from the memory of their ancestors. The Candomblé religion is a set of beliefs, practices, and cosmology introduced by Yoruba slaves and freedmen. The first houses of Candomblé, temples of worship dedicated to the Yoruba gods and goddesses, were established in early 19th century Bahia, founded by 3 freed African women, Iya Deta, Iya Kala, and Iya Naso. The Ngenho Velho was the mother of Bahian Candomblés. It was clearly established by 1830, and some accounts trace its existence to the mid-1700s. To ensure the orthodoxy of this early temple, several founding members returned to Nigeria, spent some years in the city of Ketu studying the fundamentals of Yoruba religion, and then returned to take their place at Engenho Velho. Later, a fractious dispute over the leadership of the Engenho Velho resulted in the establishment of a second house of worship, the Gantios, another of Bahia's pedigreed temples. This was followed by another power struggle and the founding of still another house of Candomblé, this by the famous Mai de Santo Anija at Ax Opo Ofonja. These three candomblés, Engenho Velho, Gantios, and Axe Opo Ofonja, which were founded by women and which rigidly maintained the ritual and ceremony of the Yoruba, served as models as well as progenitors for many of the temples presently seen in Bahia, the majority of which are still led by women. Despite the immense influence of Afro-Brazilians on Brazilian culture, they still suffer from mass oppression, social and economic. The average view of the Afro-Brazilian can be seen through how they're portrayed in popular culture or cinema in general. Similar to how African Americans have been portrayed in Hollywood historically, Afro-Brazilians suffered from the same indignities. Summing up the portrayal of Afro-Brazilians in cinema, one Brazilian scholar identified various characteristics and representations that define the Afro-Brazilian image. These include the old black sage, the black mammy, the black martyr, the noble savage, the rebellious black, the rogue black, the slum dweller, the crazy black, and the subservient black. Most of these being very negative, as you can see, only serving the needs and concerns of white Brazilian society. Honestly, to say that Afro-Brazilians made Brazilian culture wouldn't even be an overstatement in my personal opinion. They influenced nearly every inch of Brazilian culture, music, dance, and even the Brazilian language itself. The Afro-Brazilian influence on Brazilian Portuguese is very underreported. It's not as evident in formal Brazilian Portuguese, but it's fundamental to popular Brazilian Portuguese. The popular speech of the average Brazilian is full of African traces. Furthermore, the spice and flavor of Brazil, better known as samba, the very thing that makes Brazil unique, is due to the genius of Afro-Brazilians. In other words, Brazil really didn't become Brazil until the Africans arrived there.